I'm Mark Callahan, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. Heaters in a saltwater tank. Most saltwater tanks need them, but we also don't really like heaters because if they fail, they can mess up our tanks because there's exposed metal heating elements that hit your saltwater in your tank. So what really happens if a heater fails and then it turns on while it's inside your saltwater tank? Well, that's what we're going to find out today. Here's how this is going to run down. We have a freshly mixed batch of salt water. We're going to take this water and send a sample out for ICP analysis. That will give us a baseline of what the chemical makeup of this saltwater looks like. Then we're going to take our freshly sacrificed heater from what it takes to break a heater video, plug this thing in, make sure it's on, and then drop it into this freshly made salt water. Let it run for however long it's going to run. We're probably going to trip a breaker in the process. Get another sample of this water and send that off for ICP analysis. Then we're going to compare the two, see what really happens when a heater fails and then it turns on inside of your saltwater tank. We're on one of the back docks here at SaltwaterAquarium.com. I've got my freshly made saltwater. We've sent off the ICP analysis. Now we have our broken heater. I'm going to plug this thing in for you all. Luckily it's grounded. The heater is on. It is now making heat. I'm not going to touch this because this is a bare heating element. Notice we've got metal here. So we're going to drop this into the water. We're going to let this run for as long as it's going to run, and then we're going to send out another ICP analysis. This might run for 5 seconds. It might run for an hour. There's only one way to find out. You ready, Jimmy? Here we go. Oh, it's like, sounds like a pump. It's like making this pump noise. Oh, look at it, it's boiling the water. Whoa. What's that about? And how long is this gonna last? Look at that. You got some electrolysis going on or something? I really thought it would have tripped a breaker by now. Maybe we should be concerned that it hasn't tripped a breaker. That's kind of gnarly. All right, at this point, it's what, been about 30 seconds to a minute. This heater is still on. I'm guessing there's going to be some electrolysis happening because we have salt water on the metal elements with electricity running through it, but it has not stopped. We haven't tripped a breaker, and this thing is still going. So we're just going to let this run and see how long this lasts. Now, some of you are going to be saying, well, this is a reason not to use a glass heater in a tank. Here's the thing. Even the titanium tubes can fail. I've had one fail in my tank, and in my case, I got lucky. I happened to be home. I woke up and said, why is the water level low in my tank? And then I realized that a breaker had been tripped, and I thought, something may be off with the heating tube, pulled it out, and it had a hole in it. So it had failed and water had gotten in. Now, I was also lucky that I was home. I immediately did a big water change because I had a lot of water on hand, like I've talked to you about in other videos. I put in some Two Little Fishies Metazorb to soak up any metals that I thought might have been in the water. And in my case, I lost no fish and I lost no coral. So glass tubes, they can fail. Titanium tubes can fail as well. Use what you like, whatever works for you in your situation. Just keep in mind, neither one of those heating solutions are completely bulletproof. We're a good 10 minutes into this experiment and the heater, as it appears, is dead. The orange light isn't on. Now I've unplugged it because it died just a minute ago after making some popping noises. So to be safe, went ahead and unplugged this thing, but it has died. We've got some water in here. The heating element, surprisingly, is still intact. I mean, it doesn't look that much different than when we first put it in, but look at this. We've got this metal, chemical looking stuff on the surface of the water here. Is kicking out some black flecks. Not something we would want in our saltwater tanks, especially as much work as we do to make sure the water in our tanks is clean. All right, heater's contaminated this water, at least we think. Got my vial for my ICP test. We're gonna rinse this out 3 times like they tell us to. And get a sample. Package this thing up, send it off for analysis. I'm really curious to see what we get. It's going to take a couple days for this. We'll get back to you with the results. Here's the ICP results from the broken heater contaminated water. The verdict? Not good. The first thing that jumped out at me? Copper. The high limit for copper as defined by ICPanalysis.com is 50 parts per billion. We got a reading of 1,380 parts per billion, or 1.38 parts per million, or 1.38 milligrams a liter. For reference, when treating fish for ick or marine velvet, the copper dosage is 0.5 milligrams a liter. And yes, even the 0.5 milligrams per liter level kills inverts every time. So our 1.38 milligrams a liter level isn't going to work well with inverts, including the corals in your tank. At that level, it wouldn't take long for corals and probably your fish to start dying. Nickel, which has an upper limits of 20 parts per billion, weighed in at 1,565 parts per billion. Zinc was also sky high at 695 parts per billion when the upper limit is 25 parts per billion. There's lots of junk in this contaminated water that you don't want in your saltwater tank. What wasn't in the water, which I expected would be there, was aluminum. Its levels of 5.645 parts per billion were well below the max allowed level of 200 parts per billion. At least the water had that going for it. So what do you do if your heater fails and spews contaminants into your tank's water? First, do a large water change. You need to get as much as that contaminated water out of your tank. I know, you want to keep things stable and a large water change won't help that goal, but in this case, it's an emergency. You gotta do what you gotta do. As I've said in several of my videos, I always want to have at least 20% of my tank's volume on hand in a mixing station. Now 20% isn't a huge water change, but it's a start, especially when time is of the essence. Here's a hint, RODI units don't make water very fast. Then add a metal absorbing agent such as 2 Little Fishies Metazorb and or a polyfilter pad. I have both of these products in my emergency kit ready to go in case I need them. Both the large water change and the metal absorbing media saved my 448 gallon tank when my titanium heater failed. I lost 0 fish and 0 coral because I acted quickly and because I was prepared. Yes, it helped that I was also at home, but if I wasn't, then my tank buddy would have had what he or she needed to jump in and save the tank. Any heater can fail, and while I hope it doesn't happen to you in your tank, being prepared never hurts.